as with anything, alcohol needs to be enjoyed uh, responsibly, but just like food needs to be enjoyed responsibly, just like, um, you know, leisure activities need to be enjoyed responsibly. You know, we need to, have moderation in the forefront, but moderation isn't abstinence necessarily. It doesn't have to be. And so I think that, uh, you know, we want to be a part of what people are choosing to incorporate into their special drinks, whether they're alcoholic, whether they're non-alcoholic. And we want to be, an important piece of that going forward.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Decoding Cocktails podcast. I'm your host, Chris LeBeau. At the ripe age of 38, I left my former career behind and joined the hospitality industry. Since then, I've been on a rapid journey of learning, meeting all sorts of great people, and this podcast is my chance to bring you along with me, whether I'm interviewing somebody that works in the industry, another enthusiast, or occasionally stepping back to share what I'm working on or my thoughts. I'm so glad you're here, and so with that aside, let's get into today's episode. What's happening, everybody? Welcome back for another episode of the Decoding Cocktails podcast. I am Chris LeBeau, and today my guests are Joe and MariElena Raya. They are the founders of Bittermilk Bottling, a syrup mixer and ready-to-drink cocktail manufacturing company located in Charleston, South Carolina. So they met at the Culinary Institute of America in New York, and after becoming an item and spending some time there, they chose to move back to MariElena's hometown of Charleston. And at the time, this is around 2010 or so, they didn't really see the newer style of cocktail bar that had begun to pop up, especially in New York City. So in a location that her family had occupied for a while, they ended up opening a cocktail bar called the Gin Joint. And they ran it for many years. But as they started up a family and had all that experience under their belt, they sought a different work schedule so they could better balance life with their kids. So thus, Bittermilk was born. And I was interested to have this conversation because while I've used craft cocktail syrups before, I wanted to really unpack them a bit because I think there can be so much pride for some cocktail bars in making their own house syrups. And I think there is still so much of a very intense reflex to all of the bad artificial syrups and mixtures out there that I wanted to hear more about them and what I didn't know. As you're going to hear in this interview, one of the things they've done from the get-go is attempt to bring the same amount of care and technique to syrup and canned cocktails as they did to the cocktails in their bar. So this requires an entirely different set of tools and processes, and they'll be quick to share all about the learning curves they've weathered. But as was said at one point in the interview, what if a cocktail mixer could occupy the same space as coveted on a person's back bar or at a proper bar as their spirit? What if you were just as excited about the syrup as you were a whiskey, for example? Craft cocktails, bars, they really trust the distillers to make spirits for them, and obviously it's a controlled, regulated product. The question is, what if we also trusted people to make syrups for us too? So in this, we're going to talk about how they began making NA drinks, which as MariElena was pregnant with their children, as well as for their children, they've experimented a lot with NA drinks over the years, as well as the dimensions of flavor that are unique or are not as common in some syrups. So they have some that are, they have a brand called Tippelman's, and this is a lot more like traditional syrups, but they obviously have all sorts of flavors. I recently used their double-spiced falernum syrup in a wonderful whiskey sour, but they also have more complex syrups that are going to be kind of an all-in-one for something like an old-fashioned or a Sazerac-style cocktail. So a final thing worth sharing is Joe talks about, and I can relate to this, part of their growth And when he was younger, he wouldn't have been ready for this. But as they've seen their family evolve, once upon a time, their friends were obviously likely more all in the know in the cocktail sphere. But now, courtesy of meeting many of their kids, friends, parents who are less into it, they might be intimidated by something as simple as stirring an old fashioned or a Sazerac. So, with that, they also just launched a line called Bar Coupe Bevy, which is really kind of a standalone product. You just mix booze with the spirit and you're done. They sent me their ginger smash bottle, and I used it on 4th of July with great success. You can really feel the passion that they are bringing to this. And for me, it was a very edifying conversation as I think more about what is my responsibility to create versus to curate, if you will, when I'm hosting an event, working with a bar, etc. They have 4 standalone product lines at this point, but a great place to find them all. You can always visit them at bittermilk.com or on Instagram at drinkbittermilk. And there will be links to those items in the show notes, of course. So enjoy this conversation. So, Joe and MariElena, first, thanks for taking time to chat. But I was curious, with kind of your background in the hospitality industry, with the leap to syrups and canned cocktails and all these things that we're going to talk about, what was kind of the first inspiration for that? The thing that started bothering you? How did you begin to kind of wonder if like this was something you might try selling actually?
Yeah, well, I think a brief history about us will answer a lot of questions. So, Joe and I met at the Culinary Institute of America. We were both attending culinary school there. And Joe's focus was always sort of beverage focus, wine, spirits. And then I had always just tended to be more in the kitchen. Upon graduating, we worked at different restaurants. We got married. We moved back to my hometown in Charleston, South Carolina, where we live now. And we took over my father's restaurant. We knew we worked well together and we wanted to continue working together. And Joe always sort of had this dream of opening up his own restaurant. So we actually were able to take over the location of my father's place and turn it into a place of our own. It was a very unique spot, and the kitchen was very, very small. And so we knew that a cocktail bar, would do really well there. And so also at that time, Charleston didn't really have anything in like a high-end craft cocktail bar like we saw in New York City. And so we knew that it would do well in that location. It would work well for the size, and also would allow Joe to focus on beverage and allow me to still stay sort of in the back and not focus as much on the food. Although we had great snacks, it was definitely a beverage based business. And so from there, we started having children, and we wanted to sort of readjust our lifestyle of these late nights and constantly having to be there. And so we decided we could do still something in the beverage world, but creating this retail product that we would hopefully, be able to take over as our business and allow that to sort of allow us to have the lifestyle that we wanted. We took the same approach to making this bottled cocktail mixer as we did to our drinks behind the bar, which was really like a very hands-on, technique-driven. We really used a lot of our culinary sort of knowledge from, going to school and working in a bunch of restaurants, flavor pairing, manipulation of the ingredients where we're smoking and charring, things that we did behind the bar, we were sort of recreating into a bottled product. So we were taking this approach that we hadn't seen anyone take with cocktail mixers before, a real culinary focused approach. And like we said, if anyone wanted to sort of rip us off, like good luck in trying, because it took so much work to make this. I mean, we were still at the time hand bottling and just doing all this sort of on the side to see if it would take off. But that was really the start of it all. We didn't know, we didn't set out to do exactly what we're doing today. It's just evolved over time, and it's been an awesome blessing. But it's definitely not what we sort of set out to do.
Yeah, and if we could sum up Bittermilk, kind of the mission, in just a few words, which I'm terrible at doing, by the way, is is that at the time that Bittermilk started, which was 2013, bourbon was just kind of creeping into that really awesome phase where people are just getting interested, and people were wanting to try things, and people were finding their favorites, and it didn't have to be the usual suspects either. People were finding like resonating with some story and packaging and product, in a real fun way in the bourbon industry. And I said, to myself, wouldn't it be interesting to have a cocktail mixer that could live on the shelf with that bourbon? Because at the time, cocktail mixers were kind of like a jug of a colored citric acid solution that you would kind of have tucked away in a cupboard. And if you had a bunch of people asking for margaritas at your house, you might kind of grab it, pull it out, around the corner and dose them out and then put it away. It wasn't something you were especially proud about. It was just kind of a utility and serving that sort of need. But I felt like there was a way to elevate that experience, and there was a way to get people interested into cocktails that maybe wouldn't be willing to take such a big leap of kind of like, going all in with I need all this stuff, and I need this different juice and this different syrup, and I need all of these different things. It's like, well, let's have a step where we can get them tasting something that was made by hand, made with a lot of attention to detail and a lot of care. And let's have them taste that and let them get kind of into it. And then from there, man, it's like you get someone interested in something, and then you don't have to do anything else, because then they're going to take it from there.
So the first thing I like just even the visual idea of, and I just had a conversation with Jim Meehan and Emma Jansen about their book Bartender's Pantry. How do we think more about, the traditional mixers in a cocktail, the almond milk, the lime juice, the whatever, but how do we, like with your syrups, what if that held as proud of a placement on our back bar as did the whiskey or the rum or whatever? What if it was something we were excited to display as opposed to kind of, to your point, like, oh, and this is how it just kind of gets topped off. And so that is a kind of a fun visual right there. Since you brought it up and we kind of talked about it, we wanted to get to this. Are there ways you'd begin as a consumer? I mean, clearly, the design and the packaging on your guys' bottle shows that like it was certainly given some love and attention. But when it comes to that bottle of citric acid you were talking about there, if you're a consumer, or talk to us about some of the steps that you feel like differentiate a product like yours to some of the other traditional mixers, however you want to go about it. But I'm always interested in, how do people make a more educated decision on these things? And sometimes it could just be buy a bottle and see what happens. But how do you begin to make that decision if you're a person in a store who's staring at, a mixer's aisle right there?
That's a really good question. And, so many people are just gravitate to looking towards packaging, and the assumption there, I think, is that if the care and attention that was put into the packaging is anywhere like what is in the bottle, then they're going to be okay. And to some extent, that might work. It's a very simplistic solution, because um, in packaging, you're trying to convey a message. You're trying to like isolate a certain crowd and say, you are my people. Like you can see me, you can hear me. Let me show you what I'm all about. And that is very important to us. And we work with a really talented designer, Blake Suarez, and we just have these really great exploratory meetings, where we talk about that. And what were you gonna?
Well, and also the name Bittermilk comes from we don't have milk in it, and we are not bitters. It's bitter milk because we want to emphasize on the bittering agents of each of the mixers. And so, thinking that a well-rounded cocktail comes from the sweet, sour, and bitter components, so it's like an extra thought put into it. We highlight those on the back of each of the bottles, but that I think would help a consumer to see, okay, like this is going to be, well rounded. It doesn't just have like an overly sweet or an overly sour sort of mixer feel to it. It's got some depth in there, which I think is also,
Yeah, another fun fact about the name Bittermilk, it's like, kind of say, how do you say in one word that this is a beverage meant for adults? Um, milk is kind of like, oh, the kids drink some milk, and milk for dinner, and it's kind of like when the kids go to bed, let's break out the bitter milk. Um, but also another way to look at a product and evaluate it is just to turn the bottle around, and look at the ingredients. We use natural ingredients like, for instance, our citrus juice comes from Florida. We order it on Thursday. It gets juiced the following Wednesday and is shipped to us on Saturday. Like that kind of, we have a relationship with them, and we built that in, and it's great. So we're able to still uh, we're able to focus on our ingredients. We use a natural sugar which has a brown color. So our margarita mix in the Bar Coupe Bevy line is not. It has a little bit of a brown tint to it. Honestly, that comes from the sugar. But we try to incorporate, which you can't see with the label, uh, techniques and process. We use brewery equipment because we feel like it's important to remove dissolved oxygen from our citrus products before we're packaging them. We package with liquid nitrogen dosed on top to remove oxygen in the headspace. We use glass bottles with metal caps because they seal properly and they can keep oxygen out. Um, all these things, like a plastic bottle, a plastic cap, it doesn't have a great seal. You have to use preservative. And so but we don't use preservative. We try to keep everything as natural as possible. And it's hard. It's hard to do that. There's a lot of learning involved in that. There's a lot of learning how to filter out natural products, which one week come to you a certain way and another week they come a different way. And, your team has to figure that out. So it's not easy, but we hope that when people taste our products, that they can taste the difference, and that we get that the loyalty from them at that point.
Yeah, no, it makes good sense. Oh, go ahead, MariElena. Do you have something else you want
we
to add?
also have some awesome partnerships that we've developed even from our gin joint days, like our friends at Willet. We use their bourbon barrels to age our mixers. We met the woman from Bulls Bay Salt Company, which is a local salt company, and we work with her. And we even sell barrels to her where she smokes a sea salt, and then she sells us the salt back for one of our other mixers that we make. So we have a lot of really fun partnerships, and we've developed a lot of really great relationships over the years of other, like-minded artisans, really.
Do you I'm curious. So I was thinking of this quote while you were talking, either before or during this conversation, about kind of the amount of work and technique that goes into it. And I remember this restaurateur saying, when they were opening up their restaurant, that the amount of time they put into perfecting their French fries, it was like insane. But they're like, our restaurant is only as good as its fries. And so I'm curious, as you kind of when you're looking at the syrup industry, or your work, is there kind of like your gold standard product? You're like, we knew we had to get this one right, or how do you kind of think about like the marker of a good quality product in that way? Does that make sense?
That's a really good question. And I have to say, like this just shows you how ignorant we are. We came from the restaurant industry into manufacturing thinking that there were going to be similarities, and it's like the amount of stuff we learn on a daily basis is so humbling, that we can never be egotistical again. I mean, just never. We our first product, Bittermilk number one, old bourbon barrel aged old fashioned mixer. I you know, back at Gin Joint, I mean, when we opened up, this tells you this is in 2010. Our 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 old fashioned, standard old fashioned was $10. It used Willet Family Reserve rye, um, homemade Demerara syrup, Angostura bitters, and an orange peel. You know, and it was beautiful, delicious, terribly delicious. And we we drank a lot of them, and everyone did. You know, but we had ingrained in our mind what a delicious old fashioned tasted like. And we said, how do we get this product to a consumer in a way that they can enjoy this and they can like make this for their friends, and their friends can be like, this is the best old fashioned I've ever had. And I didn't even know you could make a drink. Like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're like a superhero right now. That's what we wanted to create. And, you know, I feel like, you know, that product is still our number one product. It is our number one seller. This year is the first year we've ever won an award on it. And this is 10 years after the fact. Well, Garden and Gun. Yeah, that was, I have to take that back actually. But, what I'm saying is, you know, we push this product in front, and it is our best seller, and it, you know, we're making a lot of bottles of this per month. And we make old fashioned the same recipe using Pappy barrels for Pappy and Co. because they recognize the quality as well. And also St. Augustine Distillery, who's another beautiful distillery in the South. And so we are just when you think, you know, like, uh, you know your path, you know, then you get thrown a curveball. You know, we always were asked about a margarita mix. I was like, I'm not going to make a margarita mix. I'm not going to make a margarita mix because, you know, it's not going to be what people want. It's not going to be a crowd pleaser, but yet I'm trying to sell it as a crowd pleaser because I'm putting the word margarita on it, the most popular cocktail in the country, you know, or in the world. And so but then, you know, our friends changed when we sold our bar to all of our kids' parents' friends, and they're like, they see all our Bittermilk products, they're like, what is that? And we're like, they're cocktail mixers, you know. They're like, if I saw that in the store, I wouldn't know what to do with it. I wouldn't buy it. And we're like, what are you talking about, you know? And so we just saw this, you know, that there were consumers that just wanted something accessible. They wanted something called a margarita mix, and it's okay if it's a little bit different, and it's okay if you get a little bit of, you know, flack for using, you know, raw cane sugar and stuff like that. I mean, everyone doesn't have to buy it. And then you know, I we came out with the Bloody Mary mix this year. And you know, I worked hard on it, but I'm like, what do I know about Bloody Marys? You know, like, and uh, it just won product of the year at the Specialty Foods Association this year, beverage product of the year 2024. I mean, I'm like, what the heck is going on? Like, I would think our old fashioned mix would be that, but no, it was something that was more accessible, something that, you know, consumers found that there was less of a barrier between them and that product. And I want, you know, I want to learn more about how I can make products that are useful for people, you know, rather than just products that I want to make, you know. um I think I can still stay interested, but also just make products that help people, you know, bring people into the fold, you know, of cocktails, whether it's alcoholic cocktails, non-alcoholic cocktails. Just like, we call it for our kids, we have 4 kids, and we call it a special drink. It's like, you know, it's nighttime, we worked hard today, let's have a special drink, you know, and kind of just bringing some people into the fold, to say like, hey, let's elevate this special drink experience, and you can be as involved in it or as uninvolved in it as you want, you know, depending on the products you buy.
Hmm. I'll tell you what, whether it's a friend, competitor, adjacent, you know, previously garnishes, now I guess garnishes and mixers, Daniel Singer of Filthy. Um, when he and I talked, I remember him saying, that like being an entrepreneur is about discovering your own personal pain threshold. And so, yeah, I think to your point about the humbling nature of the business and like what you want it to be versus what, I think about it all the time too. It's like, okay, like what am I pushing versus what do people I out there want? And yeah, I meet people all the time like, oh, that word that I think is just so accessible. They're like, I wouldn't know what that is. So the reminder of what we think the market wants versus not. And I love the idea of when getting to the end of the day, you deserve a treat. That said, one thing I want to touch on too before I forget, I guess you talked about non-alcoholic cocktails, and I like this idea that many of your mixers aren't just sweet and sour, but also bitter, adding that refreshing element and also that additional depth right there. When leaning on some of your mixers for NA drinks, do you find in addition to the mixer itself that there's other things you need since the booze is not present to add additional body or astringency? I mean, and again, shout out to all the kids out there. Their palates may not be quite at times as advanced as adults. Um, but are there ways in which when you're making them special drink for your kid or for friends, are there things you're adding to kind of add that depth?
Yeah, I think when you consider like the pantry that you have in your home or in your business, if it's like a restaurant, um, you want, I think the industry is doing a really good job of representing non-alc these days a lot better than it used to. And going to a craft cocktail bar 10 years ago and asking for a non-alc, you're kind of like, it's kind of like, what are you pregnant, or like, what are you, what why aren't you drinking? And now it's like, there deserves, well, when my wife was pregnant, I really wanted to do some fun stuff for her, during that time. That's honestly probably when we kind of started thinking about it more seriously. And um, complexity, alcohol, because of fermentation and distillation. I mean, there is so much complexity just baked in. But that isn't the only source of complexity. And I think that by playing with the balanced components of sweet, sour, bitter, salty, even, and coming up with formulations that work, I think one a simple thing is just like, if you take our old fashioned, mix, you could make a cocktail with like a tea, for instance. You could also switch up the tea. You could do like a lapsang souchong tea, and you've got like a smoky element. You've got like a savory, smoky, old fashioned type of experience, and it's non-alc. The Tom Collins with elderflower and hops, with soda water, it's pretty clean. With green tea, it's like a little bit kind of funkier, a little bit kind of playing off the herbal elements. I mean,
Yeah, I think it's like a non-sweetened base, and switching that up is key. And then also how you prepare it can change so much. So, for example, from shaking it vigorously with lots of ice versus stirring and topping with soda water, versus blending or even making hot cocktails. But also for our kids, garnish is king. So, just garnishing the heck out of it, and they think it's so fun. But that's the cool thing about really the Bittermilk line and our other mixer line, Bar Coupe Bevy. So those really have everything in it. I mean, that's why we developed them. So we say labor's in the bottle, just add booze or soda water. But once you start adding other things that have other, sweetening aspects and acidity, then you're sort of, overdoing it, I guess, with the Bittermilk and Bar Coupe lines. We do have a line of syrups called Tippelmans, and these are like bar syrups, coffee syrups. So this is just the sweetening aspect for cocktails. And that line you can play around with a ton, and then start adding, a more acidic base, and switching it up and adding a smoky element, or things like that. So we make a falernum that's delicious and great for, lots of cocktail tiki recipes, to a smoked maple old fashioned. So we literally take really good maple syrup and smoke it over bourbon barrel staves. And this now has a super complex smoky element. And, maple is such a nice but unique sweetener that makes a great old fashioned, or, lots of different stirred drinks. So that line is really fun for that. So I think we have tried to introduce other product lines that do achieve different goals. So Bittermilk was the first. It was really to, elevate your home cocktail, something you're proud to put next to your nice bottle of bourbon. Tippelman's was our next line, and that was sort of to bring it back to bartenders that really wanted to sort of create their own cocktails and have more, ways to sort of change it up. We say taking that line, if you just sub out simple syrup in every cocktail and swap in one of these syrups, you're going to have a totally new cocktail every time. And then Bar Coupe Bevy is one of our more recent lines. And that is really just, we wanted to have, that's the margarita line that Joe is talking about. So really approachable, easy to use. It's for everyday use. Like, we don't want you to feel bad to use it. We want it to be in your fridge, using it every night. Let your kids have some mixed with a little bit of soda water. And it's just a really approachable line of mixers. And then our latest line is Drinkmanship. And so this is ready to drink canned cocktails. And so it's our first line of alcoholic products that Joe's been having a lot of fun playing around with.
As a snooty mixologist, I'll always deny this even after this airs. But yeah, no, on 4th of July, you guys had sent Bar Coupe Bevy, the ginger smash product up, and I was just like, supposed to bring something to this party. I don't want to do it. I was like, great, grab a bottle of bourbon, ginger smash. And yeah, people smashed that drink. And I was like, perfect. My work is done. So yeah, it's very nice for the moments when I'm like, when I'm still, my ego is still feeling a little like I'm supposed to do something, but my body is like, I don't want to. So yeah, that was a big hit. So also thank you for that. And I have some work to do after this today. And I promise, not that I haven't used tea before, but I'm definitely going to make a Lopsong old fashioned while I'm working this
Ooh,
afternoon. So
I like it.
yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, and I love how you um so one, yeah, the idea of, you know, part of the other thing about cocktailing, of course, is just giving it a whirl. And so, but the idea that for something like the bitter milk, that what you need is a tea or a non-sweetening agent, or, the Tippelman's, the idea that, okay, just sub out simple and drop this in and see what happens. Every once in a while, it's not going to be the perfect drink, but, giving people just license to think about how to play is useful in that regard.
Yeah, I think it was Jim Meehan that used the term like the Mr. Potato Head method with cocktail making. And that method is particularly fun, especially with if you've got some nerdy bar friends and you have some classic cocktails, like daiquiri, old fashioned, um, you know, any sort of sour, like a sidecar, like whatever you want to throw on there. And you just kind of you kind of Mr. Potato Head, some different main spirits, acid juices, and the Tippelman syrups. um it is really fun to see what just comes out of that total mix of having, a daiquiri with burnt sugar and uh you know who knows, but and mezcal. I mean, it could just be, any sort of thing. And it's surprising what kind of fun stuff can come out of that.
I completely agree. And so to that end, and the fact that you've been producing these for so long, I'm curious to hear about the consistency factor. I mean, at a lot of distilleries, for example, blending is really this art in terms of how does one bottle taste like another, you know, without like giving away any keys to the shop you don't want to. How do you how much of it is just palate and just like understanding like where things are coming out versus where you expect it? But how do you better ensure that like one bottle of bitter milk, hopefully bitter milk rouge or your bourbon barrel old fashioned tastes roughly the same as the next? What do those steps look like?
That's a really good question. And that's my job. Like straight up, that is my job. Developing products and developing systems is my job. And the systems are where you can hang your hat. It's your process and your systems. And that's what, in a restaurant, it's the same thing, but oh so different as well. When everything's a la minute and everything is kind of prepared one at a time, it's just a totally different set of systems. But the systems that you have to create to ensure that consistency in a product that is bottled in advance and gets to a consumer, and then the consumer has their way with it, and you no longer are in control, is daunting. And I have to shout out to our front office. We have a quality manager. Her name is Anne Marie, that does an amazing job of like doing all the boring work, like the work that I can't concentrate, and do this work, because it's all about, you know, collecting data, analyzing data. Where are data points where we have to be for food safety, but where are data points where we have to be for our product, for our quality, to make sure that this product is not only consistent but at the highest level that we can make it. And that managing that system, developing the system, managing the system, it kind of comes back to that line I said about ignorance before. When I thought I could do everything off the cuff. Well, you can't. And the moment you like say like, hey, I can't do this because I'm not good enough. Like, I may be the owner of this business and I may be developing all these things and these may be my recipes, but you know what, I'm not good at this. I need somebody to help me. I need somebody who's really good at this. I need someone who's really good at this. I need to be able to do my job and not get burned out. I need to have a team, where everyone's lifted up and, gets to contribute, because Anne Marie, even though that's a boring job for me, she loves it. Like, she loves doing that every day, and she gets enthusiasm out of, fulfillment out of it, and that's awesome. Because people are all just different, and we're all just contributing to make sure that these products are the best that they can be. So I could go into a lot of detail about specific problems, like problems that you have with juice, problems that you have with doing an ambient or chill filled product with pasteurizing, and it be a juice product, and pectin issues, and filtration issues with pulp, and clarifying juices, and all these sorts of things that the way that I look at it is, I made my career and I made a name for myself standing behind a bar and making cocktails for people, and doing everything the hard way, doing it all myself, and having control over every single little detail in like a really, really, uh, you know, a really controlling manner, and I'm in the same position in my warehouse, but it's just a whole different set of equipment. And we manufacture our products from whole ingredients all the way to the end, to slapping a label on the bottle, can, sleeving, everything is done in house. And it takes a lot of space. It takes a lot of equipment. It takes, people who know to run equipment and maintain equipment. We have multiple bottling lines, canning line. We have a high shear mixer, which emulsifies coconut cream without having all these weird additives. We have liquid nitrogen doser. We have a nitrogenator. We have like all these really fun, cool things. I mean, I love equipment. I love process equipment, and I love culinary processes. And so, we have things that I can make things in my facility that you cannot make behind a bar because there's just no way to. Drinkmanship, we distill the gin that goes into the tropical Negroni, which I've heard is one of your favorite cocktails. Just kidding. But we distill that gin specifically for that cocktail. you know that's fun. Like that's like really, like, for me, that's what gets me like jazzed, get up out of bed in the morning. We take the vermouth that goes into the tropical Negroni, we barrel age it in X Bittermilk #1 barrels, and we barrel matured that for a year before it went into that cocktail, using clarified juices. It's basically a Negroni that gets lime juice and pineapple juice, and that's kind of really all. You should try making one with your standard ingredients: Campari gin, sweet vermouth, and just add half an ounce of lime juice and 3/4 to an ounce of pineapple juice. Shake it up and just check it out. But that's what that drink is kind of like meant to be about. But I guess I can't stop talking about stuff that I get excited about, and I get excited about all of the equipment that we have in our manufacturing plant to manipulate, process, and make drinks. Having been behind a bar and done the work that way, I love that too. But we're able to really make that experience in our production plant. It's kind of like a Willy Wonka thing. I love it.
It's the first time today I've heard the word nitrogenator. I just like to go on the record and say that. No, and I also think, going back to your point, Joe, as well, that um, I always heard this line that I come back to in terms of like you finding people that can help out with your business. It's 90% of anything worth doing is boring. And yeah, so when people like, oh, wow, you run a cocktail business or a podcast, that's so cool. And it's like, yeah, there's so many elements to it that are the not fun aspects that have to happen. So you need systems or people in place for all of that there. And, but I think going back to all the labor you're putting in, certainly it's like the idea that you say, like, just look at the back of the bottle, it's like, what do we know is going into this thing? And for you guys, it's going to be more evident that a lot more care and quality is going in than if you flip around another bottle, as well. So that's what's pretty cool right there. Um, so as I mean, you guys have been at this for a while now. Is there a horizon that you feel like is, I mean, are sales exploding for this as people experiment more with cocktails? Or I don't really know if I've phrased that the right way, but how do you guys kind of feel like the syrups and mixers market is evolving right now? Clearly your product line is continuing to expand. So what's kind of your guys' lens on where things are headed right now?
Again, I would draw back to the statement of my ignorance before I say anything. But uh, you know, it's we feel that there is a very positive future for us because people are like people are moving to quality. People are moving to um, they don't just want the cheapest thing, and they don't just want the most convenient thing either, even though convenience is very important, especially in this day and age where people don't have any time. They've got to work, they've got families, and all those things are more important than what we do. So the the I feel like because we focus on quality, because we focus uh, on a good story, and um, and because our product line accommodates both alcoholic and non-alcoholic opportunities, um, I feel like there's just a lot of room for us to make products that bring people like happiness and fun, you know, and um and I think that we have some development projects in the horizon. that we're really excited about. And a lot of that is kind of like in the non-alcoholic realm, in the ready to drink realm, where we're taking some of our products and introducing it that way, which allows you to enjoy it in a non-alcoholic environment, or add alcohol to it. I mean, it's up to you. And so uh I think it's the as there are challenges in this industry right now. I mean, the non-alc uh, craze is a challenge. It's a challenge in the spirits world for sure. Um, and I think that you know as with anything, alcohol needs to be enjoyed uh, y- responsibly, but just like food needs to be enjoyed responsibly, just like, um, you know, leisure activities need to be enjoyed responsibly. You know, um, we need to, have moderation in the forefront, but moderation isn't abstinence necessarily. It doesn't have to be. And so I think that, uh, you know, we want to be a part of what people are choosing to incorporate into their special drinks, whether they're alcoholic, whether they're non-alcoholic. And we want to be, an important piece of that going forward. And we want to, make things that people will enjoy and will enjoy, entertaining their friends with.
I think I like what you touched on there is that I feel like, alcohol has become a kind of a popular, like, boogeyman right now, and long history of problems and things we can certainly talk about. But yes, I think it's like you can also overdo that, just like you can overdo just about anything. Like the number of, like, I've read like the number of injuries that come into the ER from pickleball, right? It's like people are not stretching, they're weekend warriors. And yeah, so I think it's a thing where I will be interested to see. NA is not going to go away. I'm glad it's here to stay. It's a fun alternative, but I'll be interested to see kind of how this trend rides right here, because I think it's like it's popular to like beat up on it right now, and I'll be interested to see if that how that ebbs and flows or doesn't over time right there. Uh, so
Right. And I think it's also interesting to know that, the alcohol business contains a very, very large amount of family businesses. And that's farmers, winemakers, breweries, distilleries. Um, Everything is not done by big business. And big business kind of snatch and grabs a lot of things, and um, definitely does, kind of move their weight in these situations. But I just think that the more we talk about, like, there is so much history and special, like, tradition in the alcohol business that's important to culture, important to history, important that we don't lose these art forms. And there's also livelihoods, there's families, there's farms, there's all sorts of pieces of this business that are fed through people, enjoying a glass of wine at a restaurant, enjoying a cocktail, making a fuss about making, this perfect cocktail for their friends, not making, like, you know this huge trash can full of like GNS, like it's gonna just get everybody wasted. No, like, let's like elevate the experience so that all that other stuff just kind of can drop out a little bit, but we can actually, enjoy the drink, enjoy the ingredients that it's made with, and also support all the pieces in the puzzle all the way along.
Yeah, and I think like in diversifying our product lines, we've diversified, I guess, our capabilities in that we're able to partner with other companies and start making products for them. Um, and so we have a few small companies that we work with and make their products. One's a wellness product of a local woman, an elderberry syrup. And it's cool to be able to do these things with other people, for other people, in the capacity that like we are able to do it with their recipe, with their sort of, hearts for their own business. It's been a pretty fun way that we didn't see our company growing. So I think in the future, more of that will be great. We're looking to build a new facility. And so we have that underway. And we are excited about all the all the projects and fun things that we get to do.
Having come from like the craft bar, for lack of a better term, side of things, I know many high-end bars that use various, commercial, syrups and whatnot. Do you guys get much pushback from bars and restaurants as you're trying to sell into them in terms of like they take, and it doesn't have to be for everybody, right? At all. But do you get too much pushback on like they feel like it's something they need to do in house, or is it just about tasting them and like, hey, if we save your bartenders more time, they can spend more time with the guest? How do you find that process of selling into some of the bars and restaurants?
That's really hard to do. I mean, I think we thought it would be a lot easier setting out with Bittermilk than we found. And that's why we sort of developed the Tippelman's line too. But I do think that it depends on the type of restaurant, the size of their bar program, and the style of their offerings. For example, like beach bars with the bar coupe line that's an easy sell. Um,
Yeah, I think being, one of the bartenders that would be like, get out of here. I'm not going to use any of your stuff. Like that's how I was. Because I felt it was, and part of it was an immaturity. It was, I have to have a stance. We didn't serve vodka at the gin joint. We didn't serve vodka because, um, it wasn't around pre-prohibition. We wanted to be pre-prohibition themed, and we're like, we're going to stick true to that. But the reality was, I was like, man, I'm not hating on vodka, but all, not all vodka cocktails are bad, but most bad cocktails have vodka in them. So I was like, I just don't want to have to deal with like all these weird, requests. I want to make what I want to make. But I was really immature back then, and some of that helped me make me, where I am today. But there if you, I think people are getting better. Like bartenders are getting better at being able to sift through and make their own decision. They don't have to make the decision just because I'm a craft cocktail bartender and that means I can't have anything like this in here. Well, it's like actually, if they came and saw me make some of these items, they would be like, uh whoa, that's cool. I wish I could do that behind the bar, but I can't. So yeah, maybe it does make sense for us to incorporate that, to use that behind our bar. And I think that that's just a process. And I'm not pushy either. Like if someone says, "Hey, I'd never use that," I'd be like, "Cool, man, that's no big deal." Like I understand where you're coming from. And that's the thing with our company. We're not really good at sales. I mean, we've been making a lot of sales, which is amazing, but like we're not salespeople. We're just like kind of nerds that like go in and try to make fun, cool things. And then we hope people like them and tell other people about them. And that's worked. I mean, for a lot of time, which is amazing. Um, but we're not gonna be pushy on a restaurant. I mean, it's hard enough to run a restaurant. If you've got a way that you want to do things, like do it. And if we can help, man, we'd love to.
I like that though, because it makes me think about one, yeah, again, everybody should do their own thing. And I can think of the number of things in my life that were born out of immaturity. But part of the stance of a lot of cocktail bars could be like, oh, we love this rum because of the flavor and like the care that was taken to produce it. And why should a mixer be held to a different standard? It would be at least a question one could ask oneself, right? In terms
Mhm.
of why does this have this benchmark and this one have a different one? Um, and there's obviously a point of pride of being able to say, oh, this is the thing we create here in the house. But it's an interesting thing to know that also that the Bittermilk team is over here they're able to put a lot more time and, effort and investment into this because that's what they do. So yeah, it'll just be interesting to see how that goes for you guys. And yeah, I can also relate to the trickiness of the sales world too. So I hear that. What is while we'll link to all of it, rattle off the best places for people to kind of keep up with you guys, but we'll be sure to link to that in the show notes and all that too.
Yeah, Instagram and Facebook. We have all of the different product lines, so you can follow Drink Bittermilk, Tippelman's, and Drinkmanship Distillery, or you can go to our websites and sign up for our newsletter.
Cool. I will be sure to link to all that. Thank you both for taking the time today to chat. And yeah, this is great. Best of luck in the future.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, Chris.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd love it if you'd write us a review on whatever platform you listen on or share an episode with a friend. The show notes are available at decodingcocktails.com/podcast. Happy cocktailing, everybody.